liaison?
No.
So the salary changed because the responsibilities were reduced in a different way?
Which position are you using?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on line 105.
Oh.
Is that the one you were talking about? So in 2021, it was 11,000, and then 23, it's 7,920.
Yeah, and part of what you have to look at is was expended.
Yes,
So if you take a look at that 8,958,
okay.
that was what was expended. So
Mhm.
you don't want to over budget, you want to be as close as you can to that budget. So
Okay,
depending upon who the person is in that position, again, when you change personnel, it also impacts who in the budget for.
thank you.
Okay, so just a clarification one more time on line 120, you can see that in fiscal year 20, which is the 2019-20 year, you had $14,000 for that part-time service. The year after, you budgeted for a full-time guidance counselor, family support leader. That's when that change took place.
And actually, the other position that was put together with that was Bartlett's family liaison also took care of our middle and high schoolers' needs, and we paid part of her salary as well. So we combined that from that we would normally have contracted with Bartlett with our, eliminated our enrichment position and put that money into hiring that family liaison guidance counselor so that our students would have someone to support them K to 12 that would know their whole educational history and be able to follow them.
Was the enrichment coordinator previously considered a gifted and talented consultant as well? Or no?
We've never really, since I've been here, we've not done that because part of my job initially was enrichment coordinator, and then it got moved to being part of the special education, and Joan did it for a while. It's kind of moved around a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
So then on page 5, again, you'll see that reorganization of technology coordinator, that gets zeroed out, and then the line below it, 131, that's that tech library media specialist position. And the benefits that go with that as well. Right, and then support material, then you'll see 148, that gets zeroed out. And you'll see the school board salaries.
I just have a
Yeah.
question, and I just don't understand how it works, but say line 113, which is about the guidance, the salary, and then how is that estimated, like the retirement, teacher guidance, whatever that might mean?
Hold on one second.
Is that a percentage of salary?
Yeah, it's teacher retirement in the state of New Hampshire is guided by the RSA, so it's a percentage.
It's a percentage, okay.
We get to page 6. You'll see some of the other pieces, the audit, legal professional services, and there's some other school board expenses. You'll see the SEU budget there, the office of the principal, the administrative staff in support of the principal. Bottom of that page. And then you flip to the next page, which is page 7. You'll see the remaining support pieces, supplies, in the administrative offices.
I was sort of going with you through page 6, but I missed this. Line 160, strategic planning, can you talk a little bit about that?
I will defer to the board. They put in a line last year for $10,000 to support some of the pieces that were issues that they had. And I will defer to you folks, to the board, to speak to that.
Going to defer to Micah? Because I just saw it now.
Well, so far there has been no money expended for strategic planning because we've been doing it by the committee versus hiring someone external. But one of the ideas was that we wanted to have a space so that, normally that would be hired outside. And so should we need more support, should the board have a discretionary fund to be able to increase, the effectiveness of our work together? It's something that the Jackson board hasn't had to this time, so we put it in the budget so that we would have the discretion to be able to use it to make the work that we do better and more effective. But at this point, the strategic planning has, again, to reiterate, happened with the support of the community and with the board.
At the time, we actually had someone that we were considering hiring as a consultant, and COVID came through, and then an RSA came through that makes it kind of difficult to hire consultants like that without making sure everything is ironed out entirely.
And when you talk working on plan, is it like town-wide, or is this only the school board working just for our educational community? Like,
Yes.
how is that strategic planning happening?
So the strategic plan has been for the Jackson Grammar School, specifically for the Jackson Grammar School, so not for Jackson students through all education, we focus on the grammar school. We've been doing it, there's been a big outreach process through the town, there's been, at this point, 3 listing codes, a big survey that's been shared, a lot of committee work, so that's how that's been coming together. It's not a town-wide strategic plan, it's literally a JGS strategic plan.
Okay.
And we've been adopting, this was in part spurred because the Conway created a strategic plan. And instead of just adopting it for Jackson, we looked at it and said, this doesn't totally fit us. And that there are pieces of it that are really good. And it also made clear that one of the things that JGS did not have was a strategic plan. So as opportunities came up, as needs came up, it's a lot for the administration to be able to juggle those things versus to say, hey, we've set this as a strategic plan, and to go beyond one-year planning. So that was the rationale for doing the work.
Gotcha. And it's just specifically for K through 6?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's had really impressive participation, like townwide.
And if anyone has missed it, there was a draft that was sent out before the last listing post, and if you missed it, feel free to send me a note. I'm happy to get that to you. And we're just finalizing it right now, and then we'll be moving into action.
Just to follow up, you did spend some money on your DEI facilitator this year.
Yes.
Yeah. Diversity of the.
And some of that was also grant funds.
Yeah.
through the DEI facilitator, but
So a significant amount of plans already happened.
yes.
Okay, and this is just for continuation.
Yes, and also to be able to, as Kevin brought up, and Kevin, you might have to step in here, but we also use that fund as a placeholder for not only strategic planning, but for some of the other pieces that we're trying to intersperse into the school, like the DEI, the socio-emotional learning that we're doing, so that those things are integrated and fused, and then it's not a flash in the pan from the grant funding that came in to move the DEI process forward, but rather that it's consistent and becomes something that's absorbed into the school.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Micah.
On page 7, you can take a look again at the bottom part of that. You'll see custodians and maintenance salaries built in, utilities, electricity. And then if you flip the page to page,
Sorry,
yeah.
line 209, performance-based salary for the custodians?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
So, yeah, they don't get automatic raises. It's based upon their performance. So you budget a certain percentage, and if they perform at that level, they will achieve all of it. So you have to budget for that. So you have your salary, and then you have to budget for any potential increase at the highest level. So that's what it is.
All of our employees are on a performance-based raise system.
Have we ever had a time when we didn't give the performance-based salary?
I wouldn't answer that question.
Okay.
In a small place like this, if
I
you're,
just mean in general.
We legitimately follow, it's this score gets a 1%, this score gets a 2%, this score gets a 3%. So, you know, we do follow that legitimately with everybody.
Yeah, and I respect you not
Yeah.
answering. I'm just trying to get to whether, is it actually just part of your salary, but we say it's performance-based, but it's, or is it not? Is it-
no. I mean, in some cases, I don't know if it's true here, but the language, the policy language will say, we can even withhold somebody on their step, or we can keep them at the same salary, you know.
And it's not specific to custodian, I think.
No, you'll see performance on almost
Yeah.
every salaries, yeah.
Including me.
Page 8, line 210, that's where you'll see that contracted services line, that increase. So you have your typical, you know, needs that are in there, and you can see those hover around that $8,000, $10,000 range. And you'll see the increase of $15,000 for that particular process. You'll see your bus drivers, including the overtime, fuel, any of those pieces. One piece that is in here, and I think we'll have to find it, is there is a sign-on bonus that you folks also put in. So if you're hiring a brand new person as part of an incentivized piece to take on a job here, there is a sign-on bonus for $5,000 for teachers and $2,000 for support staff personnel. All right, field trips, transportation for the summer program at the bottom of page 8.
Can we go back to the sign-on bonus thing, because I saw like some question marks above heads. So that was implemented last year when Gail was having really, she was like banging down all of the doors. And as a way to try to support Gail's efforts and make Jackson a really like an appealing place to be beyond all of the really amazing things that we already know, the board was just trying to brainstorm ways of giving Gail something to have in her pocket to really just try to attract folks to come to Jackson versus every other one of the same job listings that was available kind of in the greater community. And so that was kind of a one-year thing that was presented. And then the board voted to kind of continue that as another tool to offer Gail when she's really trying hard to fill any vacancy at our grammar school with the best possible candidate that might be weighing between another position, just making a little extra carrot for her to get to utilize.
So then it's theoretical that a teacher could be making less in their second year than they could in their first year with the bonus. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Well, their salary would not be less.
No, but I mean,
The total
the
compensation.
numbers
Sure.
are what matter. So that theoretically, they would be making less in year 2 than they would in year 1.
I haven't done the math. But
Is there? I mean, if you said starting salary is $44,000,
Yeah.
and you're putting a $5,000 bonus on top of that, so you're at 49. They're not going to be good jumping from 44 to 49 in year 2 theoretically.
No, about $3,000.
Yeah, so they will be theoretically making less. So my sense is, if you stretch out a bonus and incentivize them to stay over time, not just a year, because they could pick up next year and say, I'll go to the next school that'll give me a $5,000 bonus. It might incentivize them to be here for longevity, which is what you're trying to achieve. It seems strange that somebody would be making less in their second year than they would in their first year just because of a sign-on bonus.
Would they get a step anyway? Their second year.
Yeah, so if they hired for $44,000, they get a $1,500 step, plus there's a bump in the end, so it's about a $3,000 increase.
Mine's 72. You get 2
Like
years.
750. But Peter, I think part of it was the moving expenses for people, the startup, in that first year, that's pretty critical for somebody that you're trying to recruit from outside as well.
We also, as Kate mentioned earlier, we worked really hard with personnel committee to look at how to make Jackson a really appealing place to work, not only through the sign-on bonuses, but by increasing the pay rates across the board. And hoping that, I mean, yes, someone could choose to just move to another school and get a bonus and continue that. You know, we can't control for those things, but to be able to say, this is also like, we're trying to take care of our staff and make sure that people are paid at one of the best rates in the valley was something that like came with it. So it was about a kind of universally looking at what we were paying and how to make this one of the best places to work around.
No, I'm so sorry, my only point is that $5,000 is a big,
Yeah.
it's a big number. And there's nothing and it's an untested number, right? So if somebody signs on, you're gonna give them $5,000. You don't really know how they're gonna perform until 9 months later.
Yeah.
If you-
It's actually phased into 2 payments, correct? It's half of it is initial and
Right.
half of it is, yep.
Key is to get them through the door first.
Oh, sorry.
Erica Klein. So the bonus started this year and it will happen next year as well?
Yes.
And are there any positions that are exempt?
That is, I mean, teaching positions and full-time teaching positions. I think. It could be prorated, I guess. We can go to page 9, and you'll see line 236, those are the architectural engineering services that were in the budget last year, 70,000, that is zeroed out. You'll see food service, it does cost money to run the food service program here, so that gets budgeted. And then you'll see that line 238, 239, those are your trust funds. So those are zero right now. Those will be warrant articles that we'll be discussing in a few minutes. So those are zero right now. And then down at the bottom of the page, you will see the different grants that we anticipate having in the budget for next year. So we see special education, IDEA, Type 1, a couple of the other pieces. And that is your whole budget line by line in a summary. If you flip to the next page, you'll see estimated revenue. And I want to highlight the word estimated. So we have to try to estimate not only how much we're expending, but how much you're receiving in revenue. So the top line is unencumbered balance. What that means is you have a budget that's adopted, you expend the budget throughout the year, and whatever is left over on June 30th becomes what's called unencumbered balance, okay? That $70,000 is a conservative number. Could be more, could be less. You never want to overextend your budget, but sometimes it does happen. So that's what that is. Each year, the line below that says fund balance retainage. So the Jackson School Board has asked the question, would you like to retain 2.5% of your net assessment? And the board votes on that, and that could be used for emergencies as approved by the selectmen in town as well as the school board. So they choose to do that. So you decided last year, instead of returning all of the money, to keep that $50,000 as kind of a safety net. Going down, you'll see some of the other federal sources. So Title I grants, you'll see lunch, milk reimbursement, Medicaid, National Forest Funds, so you do get monies back for that. Revenue from local services, you'll see some of those pieces. If you tuition students in, you will receive revenue for that. You have policies around there. And then you'll see after-school programming, the Whitney contribution, lunches and milk, you can see that. And then down at the bottom, you'll see adequacy. This is good news for Jackson. For years and years, you received nothing. They changed the formula for that. But it is also kind of a mechanism of the state, because the line below that, the education tax, drops there. So if you were to add the adequacy grant plus the New Hampshire education tax, it's almost back where it was previously, so, you know. And then that gives you your total revenue. And then the district assessment, that's how much you have to raise and appropriate through taxes, estimated. And you'll see that there. And then the last part is the estimated tax rate. And again, this is estimated, so it's really hard to say this is exactly what it is, but you can see what the tax rate is over time.
Can I just ask me on the page before?
The revenue page?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, the sale of lunches and milk, is there really good food all of a sudden coming up?
Well, everything is paid for, you know, that's what it was, the federal grant, the federal government said everything's paid for.
Oh,
So-
okay,
so-
that was
so
part of
that's
that.
what it was.
Okay, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Okay, sorry, thanks.
Jessica?
So just a question, increases are not automatic for staff salaries.
Correct.
Some adjustments have been made. Can you tell us which positions adjustments were made for? Because I'm looking at some and they look like there was an addition, but then there's also that performance-based adjustment. So I'm trying to figure out what's the real bottom line for some of the positions.
So I will say, for all of the non-teaching staff,
Yeah,
there's at least a $2 an hour increase to their salary.
okay.
Some were a little bit more depending upon how long they've been here.
And that was the adjustment that Micah and Kate were talking about, that the personnel committee decided to raise everybody.
Okay, non-teaching.
Right.
Okay. But then teaching staff is separate, and
Yeah.
principal separate?
Well, most of your teaching staff are veteran teachers.
Yeah, and they're sort of on the
So they're almost off the scale, and then it comes back to the policies that are in place.
Okay.
So they get,
And so was the principal position also adjusted? Because I'm seeing a $5,000 increase. in that.
yeah, so it's not. Gail's personnel policy, so it's 3%. That's what's budgeted.
So, okay,
Yeah.
so that's an automatic.
Well, no,
It's
Oh, okay.
it's
performance-based
performance.
as well.
It's,
But it's not in the performance line, it's in the.
right, it is, but it's not. We had a change in the finance office, so it is budgeted.
Got it.
So that's her salary, and then the 3% is budgeted below. What is it?
So if you just look at line 169, it's automatically in there, it's not in a separate performance line. Like, so it's right, and maybe I'm just reading this wrong, but if you go to page 6.
It's confusing because the previous finance director counted it one way, and this one cleaned it up, and it's.
Okay. So we've separated out some of the performance-based, but not all of them.
No, it's all, except for if it's an adjustment that's totally made. And I knew this would be an issue because of the way that it was budgeted previously.
You didn't even know I'd be here, but.
No, and that's fine.
So Kevin, just to
Yeah.
clarify, is it fair to say that, sorry Gail, we'll talk about your line, so line 169,
Yeah.
that total that we're budgeting for
Yeah,
would be the total based on the contract. Then you go to line 189, and that's the amount that can be raised up to based on performance. And some of the numbers aren't jiving because past person ran the numbers a little bit differently.
okay. Got it.
So we can feel confident about that.
Yeah. The 94,000 in the previous year
Yeah.
is not the actual salaried amount.
Okay,
So what was happening was, when they cut her check, her salary was taken out of two different places.
okay,
So the majority of it was taken out of the first line in 169, and then there was a piece. So her salary for the current year is on line 169,
yeah.
and then the performance is below, on line 189.
Okay,
Okay, so 189, if Gail does a horrendous job for the rest of the year, that 2935 she won't receive.
okay.
If
So
she gets
And again, this isn't about.
No,
It's just
it's-
about- I'm just trying to figure out, is it a $5,000 increase, or is it a potentially $8,000 increase in that salary for that particular position?
Right. No, the most that she's gonna make is 3% of that 99,000, so $2,935. That's 3% of her current salary, which is at 99,000. Does that make sense?
I'll take it for now. Yeah, I gotta think about it, but yes.
Yeah.
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 And then, Jeff, from like the personnel 3% conversation, it was just discussing, so if the 3% for some people added like a big step, and then for other folks added like 61 cents,
Yeah,
as a baseline, everyone was brought up at least $2.
great, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sure. Do you want to read the warrant articles?
Can- I'm just trying to understand the final number before we go to warrant. So if we take out the big reduction in tuition to, mostly to Kenneth, I guess, which went up to middle school and the rest down, the budget's actually up $110,000 if you take away the tuition reduction.
Yeah, and if you take away the $70,000 architecture, it's even up even more. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, you have to look at the budget in its entirety.
Sure, I understand.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you had a good year with special education as well. So, yeah. Point state.
Peter, you're trying to kind of zero in on the grammar school's cost, operating costs, I guess.
Well, no, I look at the overall budget. I mean, I always think, we educate 80, 90, 100 kids. Everybody tends to focus on this campus, but, I mean, $250,000 reduction in tuition is that's a lot of people. It's a lot of money. So, I look at the whole number and say, well, if you take that in, because that's a number that you can count on every year. It's got a hard cost. The budget's actually up when you take those numbers, when you take the tuition out. We're showing it as a $135,000 decrease, but in reality, when you discount the tuition, which is something that we're obligated to do, we're actually at a net increase of about $110,000. My bad math is right.
I don't see it that way, but I understand what you're saying, but you can look at this from any way you want to, any angle you want to, pull out any number you want to.
This is the number I'm pulling out,
Right.
because it's $250,000.
I guess I'm saying I don't look at it that way. I mean, I get one of your questions. I just wanted to make sure you were just talking about this expenses, just the operating cost just for the grammar school.
No.
Hi, Melissa Grady. Just a quick question. I appreciate the increase in the salaries and all that, but are the para-educators in the non-teaching category? Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, under the non-contracted personnel policy.
Non-contracted sounds a lot better than non-contracted.
That's what I was saying.
Oh,
Yeah, that's.
sorry, my fault. No offense.
You ready for the warrant?
Yep.
All right. Any other questions so far? All right, so we're going to move on to Article 1. To see if the school district will vote to raise the appropriate sum of $2,854,739 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for the payment of the statutory obligations of the district, with $14,100 offsetting this amount for various grants. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. Those in favor? We did this? You did it wrong.
You're just reading it, this is
Oh.
a public hearing. After that, when it's closed, then the board will vote on
Okay.
whether to recommend it or
We
not.
only do this once a year.
Okay, no problem, no
Only
problem.
at 15 cents.
That's why I'm here, that's right.
Okay, any discussion? To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the capital reserve fund, special education, previously established for this purpose. That was Article 2. Article 3, what?
We currently have $197,742 in that fund.
And we're trying to, If we don't use it, we're trying to get it up to about 250,000, I think.
Correct.
Actually getting there over the years.
Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the capital reserve fund, school buses previously established for this purpose. And we are
87,476.
buying a bus, correct?
And you're buying a bus, you're scheduled to buy a bus, the bus costs about $115,000.
Question? No? Okay, Article 4, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be added to the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund previously established for this purpose in 2010.
You have 48,428.
Thank you.
That money is ultimately offset by, usually from income from the Whitney Foundation.
Okay, Article 5, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $30,000 to be added to the expendable trust fund, tuition trust fund, previously established for this purpose, with such amount to be funded for general fund revenue. Yes, I'm sorry.
That last.
That was a-
Sentence isn't in there,
Yeah.
it's written differently now.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, is that
Okay. Thank you. Do I have to reread it?
you should.
Okay. Article 5, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $30,000 to be added to the expendable trust fund, tuition trust fund, previously established for this purpose. Period.
Yes.
Okay. Questions? No?
Just a question of the
Yeah.
verbiage there, a sum of up to, or is it just exactly $30,000?
It should be
Oh,
30,000.
so it should be 30,000. Article 6, to see if the school district will vote to establish a Jackson Grammar School renovation and construction capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35, semicolon 1, for the planning, design, construction, and renovation of the Jackson Grammar School to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the Jackson School District as agents to expend from said fund. Recommendation.
Hi, Sasha Tracy. Can you just talk a little bit about how you got to that number, $250,000? I get the flexibility that's built in there, but can you talk about why you chose that number?
Yes, it was approximately a quarter of what the expenses were. So when looking at the whole project, we decided we wanted to set a decent amount of money, so a quarter of the amount of money, and not go for the entire fund, because looking at building costs, we were trying to be fiscally responsible. So Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really not a quarter of it, it's roughly probably 10% of it. But right now, we have a design that we've come up with, and we consider putting it on the warrant for this year. And after consideration, we decided that it wasn't warranted this year. We're still in COVID. But mainly from the standpoint of when we started looking at this project, we were considering a $1 million renovation to the building. And we were thinking maybe $500,000 for contingency. So we're looking at something like for $1.5 million. And that was when we were estimating high on the construction costs of about $380 a square foot. In a very short amount of time, building costs skyrocketed. And we got stuck with a situation where we really couldn't come up with a real number on what is the building going to cost. But what we do know happens when we build a building is that there's soft costs built in, meaning that you have to, just going through like the architectural fees we've spent so far, you have to spend a lot more in order to actually design the building so it's ready for specs, so you can put it out to bid. And when you put it out to bid, you kind of have to know how much it's going to cost, because you don't want to think that, okay, we put it out to bid, if it costs $1 million more than we thought it was, or $1 million less, you kind of get yourself in a lot of trouble. So soft costs were going to be built into what we're going to ask for from the town, meaning we needed $1.5 million to build a school. Some of that will be soft costs. This $250,000 that we're asking for now is primarily soft costs. It's taking this project to the next level, meaning and we picked that number high, and we picked it on purpose because we wanted to kind of wake people up and say, hey, we're considering this project, and we really want people to come and talk to us about it. Meaning, we really think that the town needs to do this, but ordinarily we get this amount of people at our annual district meeting, or this amount of people at our budget hearings, and we wanted to really kind of get people engaged in the process. But that $250,000 will go a long ways towards developing the actual cost of the buildings that we know. We want to put on the warrant relatively exactly how much it's going to cost to do. But it also gives us the flexibility to start. So if the town were to approve this year, it's really saying, yes, we agree that we need to do renovation and expansion of the school. We could use that. There's a lot involved in it. It's not just the expansion of the building. A lot of what we're talking about is how do we make this campus work for everyone. We're considering that one of the things that's coming out of the strategic plan is kind of reinforcing what the school already does, which is we do a lot of outdoor activity, whether it's classroom activity or extracurricular activity. A lot of it's outdoors. So why it says the way it is worded the way it is because we might need to spend some of that money on building playground space. Or actually starting some of the project, because it's going to be a multi-year project. It's not the kind of expansion like, okay, we'll start in July 1st and it'll be done on August 15th. It's going to take probably 2 or 3 years from start to finish groundbreaking on this kind of project. So that money can be spent towards that as well. So it's a big ask. It's a lot of money, but it will come out of what is ultimately going to be spending entirely for the project. That's why it's there.
Peter?
Question and then a comment. So maybe you don't know the answer, but if you have a sense, so would it be the intention to bond this at some point when you know you have a firmer number and the time is right?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. And then I would only, or I don't know if I'm in favor of this number. I'm in favor of the concept and the number. I would only say that at the selectmen's meeting, and I was hoping that one of the selectmen would be here tonight, they finally agreed to put money towards I call it a capital improvements plan. They're calling it something somewhat different for the entire town. I think we're at this point again in this town. I can't believe I'm saying this again because I was here for the first one. Some of us were here for the first one, where we really need to look at all the town needs, prioritize what needs to happen and in a sequential order and get a firmer handle on the numbers so the school district's not going down one path, the town's not going down another path, and they're not communicating. So I would say that before you get too far down the road, that you communicate to the selectmen, two, come to the town meeting, because I think the selectmen initially are going to put $25,000 into a capital improvement plan. But we're hoping that might get amended on the floor to be raised higher because it probably costs more than that. So, in my experience in town, when everybody's doing things individually, not much gets done because they don't see the whole. And I think where we should be looking at this town, we should be looking at the improvements and what we need to do from the entire town, not from the school district and the town. I've been the whipping boy for the fire station, and this is what part of what we had kind of hoped would happen was that if the fire station didn't get approved, at least it would get the town talking about what its overall needs are.
Peter, I completely agree with you, and I have personally myself, as well as other members, extended out to and reached to the selectmen and gotten absolutely no response. I would like to say that yes, somebody did reach out from the selectmen. They were supposed to be here tonight, and we were going to set up a meeting tonight at this meeting to further this discussion exactly as we've talked about. And we as a board have said exactly the same thing. So hopefully now we'll have a bridge and we'll get a start for that. But in the past several years, I've reached out to them and gotten nothing personally back. So I think we're gaining ground. I'm sure Jerry can add to that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to bring up, Peter. It really is the way we should be working in this town. I would say from this time last year, I think all of us kind of thought we'd be getting this on the warrant this year. We made a big push for it, and I think we were ready, other than just not knowing the costs. And at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, one of the primary reasons we decided not to put it on the warrant was because we thought we needed to work with the selectmen to get to further engage the voters of the town, to know what to prioritize, what we want to do, what our capital outlay looks like over the years. So that was the primary reason why we didn't. And I have spoken individually with all three of the select board about this, and they're all open to the idea of doing this. It's just a matter of how that works. It's not like they're not agreeable to it or opposed-minded to it. It's just this happens every time this time of year. It's like we're in May, we got all year to do this. We're in June, we got all year to do this. September comes around, like, oh, we really got to get our budgets in line and know what they are. By October, we kind of know what they are. But when December and January hit, with the holidays and everything, everyone was really kind of steamrolled into being really busy. So when a select person or a board member might not be attentive to the situation right at the given moment at that time of year. But unfortunately, it's also the time of year where we're trying to get these things out there. But I think that really is the best plan to move forward, is that we do need to engage the town and do what we did years ago to get like this building built, or not long after we had this building that we had here, or maybe one, really we just got the whole community together to talk about things and to develop priorities, and it worked well. So it's really, it's time to do that.
And my suggestion to them, and I'll shut up, was that we do get representatives from both the school, the town, and other community members that are versed in what the town's needs are, and they can work on this jointly. So hopefully that might happen going forward. I just don't want any entity to get out too far too fast and then have to pull back. I just want it to be measured and have everybody know what's going on, and that's how you get support, and that's how you get things done in this town. It's been my experience.
I would say towards this warrant article, we would not likely spend $250,000 in the upcoming fiscal year to get this on the warrant. And as you mentioned before, things can be amended up or down at the meeting. If the $250,000 number is too high for the tax rate of people to kind of contemplate, an amendment down wouldn't keep us from being able to take this to the next level to be able to get on the warrant for next year. Certainly, if there's any movement in town, people want to ask me about that kind of off the record about what number could we go with. There is a lesser amount that we could deal with that would get us further along in this project. And literally, the $250,000 number, part of that was to kind of get people to engage.
It's an interesting tactic, actually. Worked for the firehouse.
Well,
But, yeah.
I want to add a piece of it to just clarify that it's not as much that we don't know the cost. It's really that as a board, we decided that this was not the time, given what the real costs of building are right now. And we didn't feel like that was the right time to ask the town to jump into a project that could be astronomically higher versus if we put a pin in it for a year and we start moving towards it in a responsible way where we're not having to, buy wood that is at an inflated price right now, that we can actually make new, that we are all in support, that we want to be able to do this addition. We want to bring our classrooms to where they need to be, to put a preschool and et cetera, but we really thought that this was how to be smart and to spend the town's money correctly. So I just wanted to clarify that, because it's less, we don't know what's going to cost, which makes it sound like we haven't done our work. It's more, we're trying to make sure that we're doing this responsibly and that we're asking at the right time.
Thanks, Micah. Thank you,
Tish?
I have just a couple of questions, but right now, what is the population of the school presently at JGS? And what's the projection for the next year and following? Do you have those things?
I mean, everybody asks that question all the time, and we have the numbers, I'm sure Gail has the numbers, and we can go back for the 20 years that I've been
No,
here.
it's today. What's the
So
population
today?
today?
It's
47.
Yeah.
It's 47?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I just saw in the paper, it said we could be 4 to 10 in a preschool, if I'm not mistaken. But I think, I just want, and also, what happened with the 70,000, is that totally spent?
It is not totally spent now.
It's not totally spent.
Yeah.
And so that is what created the design that was in the paper?
This is that.
Yeah.
That design, right, okay.
And not only the drawings, but the architect interviewed all of the staff about staff needs and what we would envision, and worked with the board and some community members and parents to get some feedback before he drew the plan.
And regulations bringing us up to code, right, matching where we are versus what code is today for the buildings.
Yeah.
And that's right.
Increasing security as well as kind of trying to link the strategic, kind of the vision for the kind of the portrait of, what are we, what's our? Portrait of a learner, into like the goals and kind of the thought of like modern education in our community, and what does that mean for technology and makers workspace, and having a school that can perform at a level that really supports our students.
And there's preschool space in there as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Ann Bennett, she wanted to be here tonight, but she, the weather kept her away. And that may have kept the select person away too, because I thought they were going to be coming, and they said they were going to be, so that's a possibility. But one thing Ann mentioned, who was a longtime employee at the school, she asked about, has there been a conversation with the state? Because she was involved in the building back in 2008, and they said they were done, there was no more building that was going to happen on this grounds.
So I had spoken to Ann a while back about that, and one of the first things we wanted to clarify was that question. And so we had the architect, before we started doing this part of the design, he talked to the state, and there's no issue with expanding the current size of the building. Again, the question was, could we eat up any more non-building space with new building, and we certainly can. There's no issue with that whatsoever. We did have a question from someone via text about the septic, which along those lines as well. And we can certainly increase the size of the building without having to increase the size of the septic, so there's no septic issues as well. We did have that clarified in the design process as well. So we had both of those things looked into for sure.
The preschool, what is the projections for kids coming in? Do you know that for the next couple of years?
Historically, it's been difficult to estimate that, but we do get estimates based on the number of children that are born in the town. And I don't know.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, Tish, but they'll be in the book each year that we're expecting, how many kiddos are expecting each of the next 5 years, go forward 5 years.
And when we did the surveys for the preschool in the past, it was in upwards of 10.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I'm all for a preschool. I feel as though sometimes I go, I mean, my kids, they were at the church, back in the church when it was a little fusion, and it just seems like, wow, this could have happened a couple of years ago. The kids could have been over there, school supported, and have a preschool going, and it was all set. But, and I guess that brings me to thinking more about what Peter was saying is, do we need to look at this as a whole town and where our priorities are at? I see a lot of the budget issues. A lot of what's going on here is that it's becoming an unaffordable situation for families to move here. So we have to attract families. It's hard to get people making even 50 grand to move here, as I know we all know. So I think it is looking at the whole town, what's going on, what populations need what, and that's kind of my feeling. I'm supportive of the school completely, but I think we need to look holistically at this whole thing.
And just so you know, I will be following up with the select person who did say they're going to be here. So we're going to have forward motion in that.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I guess I'll sort of reiterate what Tish is saying as well. When I think of, library, what is some collaborative efforts? And I know that I think there has been some collaborative efforts with the library, but you talk about a campus, and we really do have kind of this extended campus. I mean, we talk about just paving because of the business here and all of that. There's definitely space in town that's not being used. There's complications. Certainly, we went through the whole preschool process. We learned a lot about all of that. But really engaging with the entire, I think we had a vision 2020 or 2010 or whatever that was, that if this could be part of that process. Because looking here at this Article 6, that planning design, you said not 70,000 was spent. So could we deduct 70,000 from that line, sort of from the get-go? I mean, we can bring that up at the meeting itself in terms of any amendment, but really getting those select board members moving forward on that joint conversation.
And the biggest reason for that is because if we're going to take on a multi-year expense like a bond, and both the town and the schools considering that at the same time, we should know what the tax implications of that are going to be, and it's not very hard to figure those things out. That is a very easy thing that we should be able to do. And we need to coordinate that so that we know, okay, if we do this and they do that, what's going to happen to the tax rate, because that's a guarantee to the tax rate, but we know. And that's the type of thing that we should figure out so that we can talk about that collaboratively as opposed to, hey, we should do this and they should do that, because ultimately, whether it's for the town or for the school, certainly for the school, people usually say yes. So we do need to be mindful of what the impact of saying yes is.
And, sorry, one other thing. Thinking of the numbers, I am really concerned with the idea that, we, again, very supportive of the programs and everything here, public education right behind it. Will all the students eligible come to the school? There are lots of options, fortunately, out there for families to choose from. But gosh, I hope they would start in kindergarten here, or start in preschool here. So you can never tell, certainly, but.
And I'm not sure where I don't know if we have any updates on where mandate preschool is coming,
Yeah.
I heard something on the news the other week that it was moving up again, when I was a kid, kindergarten wasn't part of school. We went to private kindergarten, but I do think there is something, and I don't know, I'm not up to it as much as maybe Jessica or Pam is, or
Yeah,
where that is now.
The White House is just talking about it.
Exactly.
They are.
It's the,
Yeah,
I don't know about
Peter?
I would only make one more comment. While this town is very supportive of the school, and from an annual budget, I've sat at annual meetings here with 3 other people, and usually that flies by. When it comes to physical plant stuff, everybody's an expert, and it doesn't always get supported, so it's got to be thoughtful. We went through the basement wars, we went through the old town hall wars, the new town hall wars. So when it comes to making changes and physical plant and those types of things, it's not always smooth sailing, whereas your budget is usually not that much of an issue. So I think that speaks to the mindset of people. They're always concerned about how it's done, what it looks like, not how it's done. They think you all do a wonderful job in the building, but they want it to look the way they want it to look.
That's a great point to make, Peter. I think that's why we really think we're ready for this. We've done all that we need to make this building a reality, because that's what the town wants to do. And that's why it's all there to really engage the town now and say, is this what we want to do?
I kind of can't help but feel, right now, this feels very comfortable, this amount of people. You're asking people to come to this meeting and vote for this, which is a lot of money. And like Peter said, the budget's going up quite a bit anyway. And I support most of those things, but this is like a big item. And I think you need more of the town engaged, and you can't expect older people with health conditions or whatever, and they're the vast majority of our town. The average age in the town is what, 48? A lot of the older, early retiree is the model of people moving into this town. To expect a lot of these people to come here and vote and sit at a meeting and deliberate during COVID, it's not going to happen. It doesn't seem fair. That's kind of my 2 cents about it.
versus putting the warrant on for the addition right now, as was one of the number one kind of goal when we did our goal setting, that we all sat last year and said, at this meeting, we would be asking for the addition, and we would be putting the addition on. And so instead, we chose to go a middle path, saying, the addition's still really important. We would really like to do that. Here's a way of engaging the conversation and trying to move the project forward without doing the big ask. But is there another path that doesn't limit the work, stop the work completely because we can't be indoors? And we're not comfortable having, gathering to have the conversation, but legally we have to gather to have the conversation. But how do we continue the work?
It's a dilemma. I know, I appreciate what you're
I mean,
saying.
if the weather's prohibitive, cooperative, we could potentially have it outside. And we did that with our school board meetings up until like December. So we can try that, we have to see what month brings. You can rule it out who's first.
One, I want to say thank you. I know how hard it is that you guys have worked on this. I've been trying to participate the best I can. I know there are a lot of people that have had. So I just want to acknowledge that and also just say I'm all for improving our physical plan as well as doing the best for our students. But what I heard tonight is that we have an incomplete strategic plan and we haven't had any collaboration with the other decision makers who are asking for taxpayer money either on this warrant or on future warrants. And so I would just ask the board to just, and I know you've already given it a lot of thought, but to just think more about it, about is this the time to do this piece? And again, I'm not looking for you to tell me, your answer tonight, but although I know you have to make decisions, but there are a lot of questions that I still have, even though I've been through all the materials, and I'm just sort of wondering. I know you had made a goal last year, and I'm a very goal-oriented person. You made a goal to get this on the warrant. Is it really the time that we haven't collaborated? Just to kind of reiterate what everyone else is saying, if we haven't collaborated, if you don't have a complete strategic plan, you're asking for more money for that, then is this really the path that we should be doing when our budget is up?
Thank you. Sasha?
I had a similar observation about feeling like there's an opportunity that's being missed here around collaborating with the selectmen and including at least sort of an agreement in here that some of that money is going to go towards collaborative planning around town-wide needs and not just the school. And I just have to reiterate what Tish said as we were talking. I thought about the preschool meeting and being in this room, and when this town shows up, you could not move an elbow in this space because there were literally wall-to-wall people. And I don't know if you've given this thought, but if this is the kind of thing that would draw that many people out, how are you going to handle it when the whole community shows up here? And I also have to say, in terms of it being inclusive and creating space for participation, that is really sending a message to folks who don't feel comfortable, who might feel comfortable in this space, or even if all of these chairs were full. But I don't know very many people who would feel comfortable if you were all there at that March meeting in whatever that was, 2018, being shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with 3/4 of Jackson. So if there's a way to get to open participation where people don't have to be here or where we could be outside in the pavilion, I think just in the interest of really being fair to our town, that would be the right thing to do.
I think that's a great
I
point.
know it's hard.
We're not in a state of emergency anymore. We have to do this in person. We have to do it that way. We don't have options for that. There are only options we can move it outside in March. That's pretty
Very
it'd be irresponsible for us to say that, if we're going to have it outside in March. The best we can do now is we have to have this in March, and we're going to have it in this room. And if that day the weather looks great, not 10 feet of snow out there, maybe we can move this meeting outside, and that's still considered the same place, but the best that we can do right now is the only thing we're hands are tied on that. Does that mean that we shouldn't be moving huge projects forward? Again, that's one of the reasons why we delayed it and didn't put it on the warrant this year. The warrant article for the $250,000 is a way to keep the project moving forward because that's what we feel is the right thing to do. but we do want to hear more. It's, yes, collaborating with the selectmen, but the reason that we do that is so that we can get more feedback from the voters, the community members.
And I think personally that we've been talking about the preschool and functionality before the fire station. So I still think we should go first if it comes down to it, but that's just a side note.
Well, we also just, there's,
We've been talking about the fire station for 30 years.
No one impressed with the fire station.
I know, but just saying, we were first.
feedback from the town office that I also got was just about that conversation that we're having tonight about being indoors, having that feeling, what's the alternative, how do we explore this? And at the same time, that there's a population of our community here that think that there's a vote on the $2 million preschool project. That there are folks that there's like a misconception of what this is in the first place. And so we talked a lot at the last couple of meetings as we're leading up to these words of like doing the PR and getting the word out and communicating with the town of what this really is and what we're really asking for. And there's folks at the post office and, at the town office asking about the, just a little bit of information that's just not quite right. And so folks that are concerned about not being here, making sure that they know what the warrant really is, and there's not a misconception in the community that, there's a $2 million warrant article for preschool. Peter?
I would only say that if moving forward, this is your call, that if physical space and safety is a concern, that you consider having it, asking Bartlett if you could have it in their gym, or go to the Grand Summit and see if you can have it in the ballroom.
It has to be in town.
It has to be in
It
town?
has to be in town.
Who's got the biggest space in town?
So that
Black Mountain.
both for the town meeting and for, it has to be in the district that you're in.
Well, or Black Mountain, somewhere that's the only other space that might be larger than this.
I think the only other space I think might be larger is the Red Fox, maybe.
Barn at Eagle Mountain?
That's all.
No, actually the town garage might be the largest
It's
physical
in the
space
town
for that.
garage.
Because that's when we talk about this a lot, the select board talks about this a lot, the town clerk talks about this a lot, the moderator talks about this a lot, I talk about this a lot with them. And when we talk about that, we're basically either here or at the town garage. Those are our best options. And if this isn't the right building, there's ways that we can make it work at the town garage as well. Karen's the one that's really, Karen Bergman, the town clerk, she works on this, she's been working on this all year round, every year since this has started. She's kind of like our Pam to some degree. She's really extremely thoughtful in how she lays out these spaces, and she's considered the garage a lot even, and for voting itself, like that's not a good idea, but it could work possibly for a town meeting, for a school meeting if we had to. So we do have other options, but it's basically either here or the town garage. But unfortunately, you have to have it in town.
I think you can get a waiver from the Secretary of State for that.
I'd be interested
I think
to know
that is possible.
We did under the emergency order, Albany moved to the Kennett Middle School gym. But that was under the emergency order.
Yeah, it's that classification that gives you that.
The only thing I would say is you need to make a decision pretty quickly, because in order to post it in a timely manner.
I think both the town and us are this is we're going to have that meeting. So, and if it's available for either one to do it outside that day, that's always the option without having to repost and delay the meeting any further. So.
Perhaps you could put people in the classrooms.
Oh, we haven't set that yet.
Yeah.
actually.
Spread them around the campus.
It's on our agenda.
The time, but
Thursday, March 3rd
it's
at
right on
7
the,
o'clock.
it's right on the warrant.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, outside, March 3rd, 7 o'clock.
What about Saturday at noon? We can't make it.
It's part of the thing too is that by law he's required to be here too, and it's coordinating 8 towns, or how many towns?
Yeah,
8 towns, and even just, if it was even just us, you know, that Saturday versus them, it's, given the, I never even thought, in fact, it was 7 o'clock at night, we're not gonna be outside, we're gonna be inside.
It's gonna be inside.
And that is gonna create,
We can have the windows and the doors open. We've done that before.
I was literally talking to Bill Kelly about this, was either yesterday or the day before, about how they would do it in the town, and how we would plan how to do it for the schools. I mean, and, you know, masks are gonna be required, and unfortunately, we still need to allow people in that aren't going to be wearing masks, and talking about setting a section for them to sit in, and asking people to be real respectful. You know, if they want to come up to speak, that they try to social distance as they do. So,
Are you able in the configuration of the room to at least set aside some space for any folks in town who feel like they're health compromised or that are wearing masks but are more vulnerable and want to be here, so that they could at least be in a space where they had a little more distance if it does turn out to be a big
Talk about the door.
that's a good,
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Good idea.
I mean, I personally at the moment feel fine, and many people in this room might also, but there are people in our community who might want to be here who actually don't want to be shoulder to shoulder.
Bill actually mentioned that we can open
Yeah.
the doors and have people.
Yeah, that's awesome, and maybe, or even like have somebody out there with them so that they can contribute.
And like, actually make those spaces available for like, you know, seating for, like, folks that feel like this. And we're up there, and so like, we're also not, you know, there's more space made by all of this.
Okay, we'll do our best. We'll work with it. Any other questions on the warrant article? No? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Public hearing.
We're going to close the public hearing now. You sure no more questions? I really appreciate you guys coming out. This was amazing.
No.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for all you do, honestly. It's been a rough year for teachers, the school board, administrators. The question is going to be, how many people are going to want to be teachers? That's what we want.
There was an article in the New York Times, my husband put out, that the teachers are going to other professions.
That's what Harvard
Go back into
He gets the Wall Street Journal.
Go back to the school board.
I thought they would last.
Now, we go into place them on the warrant, but you did not take a vote on. Yes, it is.
I don't want to get here, they were.
Go do the next one for people.
I think all the schools have
They want to go to 25 grand.
Yeah.
technically every file.
Facilities, yes. They're the craftiest little craft. They painted with 4 different kinds of doors.
So, just,
It is?
just
Not much on the ground there.
At some point, I don't think this is a moment in my life that's for that. It requires.
well, my dad's probably gonna do it for the upcoming one or two for the name.
Thank you.
Not a good fit to do, just keep doing it.
Yeah, it is.
It's just exciting. Crescendo.
So that's, so we should get that, get a tie back.
Good.
All right, I gotta get up at 4 tomorrow morning.
I'm just saying, like, I have like 8 minutes and then I have to be able to take over a thing.
Yeah.
We just have a few seconds things to figure out.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And you all do a wonderful job, and you do it
board meeting back.
I can
Resume. Okay, we are at, I believe, the annual meeting, clerk vacancy.
Yeah, if you know of anybody, we can try and draft somebody to be the clerk. Gino, I think, stepped in last year to do that. If anybody has a,
Maybe Scott, Tim, Scott.
yeah, Tim, Scott.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
He's more of a moderator, but
Am I
anybody.
gonna be a moderator too though?
No,
No.
you guys appointed Sasha as a moderator.
Sasha's.
Oh, so she is gonna do it?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. She just said it too.
Cool, perfect.
Yeah. So, principal? I can't say.
I just had a lot of newsy stuff that, given the late hour and it's snowing, I think if it's okay with you folks.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're doing great.
It's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Board member issues, committee reports, we have another policy meeting on the 7th. Anything else?
Yep, my thing was about that, Kevin and I met to talk about the world language position specifically, and talk about, Jen, you and I had spoken a while back about how the parameters for that position had been narrowed to cast a wider net to see what folks we might get to apply for that. And then Kevin and I spoke about making those parameters then wider to include, so it's a larger breadth. So if we were to have a certified educator in that position, there is space to pay that position, not as a tutor, but more as a teacher, like to step the tier up to reflect someone's qualifications.
Okay. And we would have work for that, please. So going up a level.
The
Same
position
requirement.
would be appropriate for both a tutor and somebody who's a qualified certified educator.
Okay.
Yeah, whoever's in that position gets paid how they should be paid based on their
Qualification.
qualification.
Yes, that makes sense.
Great.
And we had the Whitney Center meeting last week, nothing really except just the coordination with the school. There were a few dates that, like for this meeting tonight, that like the Zumba person couldn't use the building. Turns out she had a skiing accident yesterday, broke her femur. So they moved it, gave her Tuesdays as an alternative, and she taught on Tuesday. But she skied on Wednesday, broke her femur, so we don't have to worry about that conflict at this point in time. So it's just balancing with the school. So
That was tough.
it's all right.
Okay.
Any more?
Any other committee reports? No? Okay, so date for next meeting, Thursday, March 3rd, 6:30, and then the annual meeting at 7. Any other citizen comments? No, okay. We have no non-public, and then we're gonna vote on the warrant articles.
Right in?
Yep.
Mike, how much time you got? So we can fly this real quick.
I have to transition my husband out, I told him I'd be home at 10 to.
Okay, so we go.
I live 1 minute away.
I just need signatures before you.
Got it.
Do I need to read everything? Can I just say?
Just say Article 1.
Article 1, all those in favor of moving it forward for the annual meeting? Okay. Article 2, moving forward?
It's not just moving forward, we're
Voting.
Voting
To be in
for,
favor.
in
In
favor.
favor, yes. Article 3, voting in favor of. Article 4, voting in favor of. Article 5, and Article 6. And 7.
7, we don't vote.
Can I come sign something?
Yep.
Signing the warrant and budget forms, and then the meeting will be adjourned. All those in favor? Okay.
Second.
Second.